Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast.
Hello everybody. I'd like to wish you a very, very happy Christmas. This might be the last time we speak to you before we take a bit of a break over Christmas, although it's not much of a break. Going to be working on getting everything ready for the pre-Dakar show at the bike shed. Really looking forward to that. But you never know, I might be able to prize Noel away from the sherry and we might squeeze another episode in before Christmas. Apologies in advance, we had a few sound issues with this episode. Stuff just wasn't working and then I got it working, but it's not recorded with the proper microphone, so my sound's a bit shit, but it's all right. In this exciting episode, we are delighted to welcome Laramoto from Off of the Telly and her good mate, biker Maja. A couple of road riders that have decided to come over to the bright side and are transitioning from the tarmac to the Tet. So they're teaming up and they're heading off to the Balkans on the Tet early next year. So we're going to talk about their history of motorcycling and we're going to find out what their trip is all about. There are still a few tickets left for the Bike Shed show, for the pre-Dakar show with ourselves and Lel and a host of other people, including Patsy Quick, the first British woman to enter and finish the Dakar, and I think it's the first time we've mentioned this, Charlie Borman will be joining us on the stage too, so I'm really excited about that. And the final thing I wanted to talk about before we get into this episode is we have been nominated in the Sports Podcast Awards for 2025. Really pleased to be nominated with the likes of the BBC's Formula One podcast. There's a lot of Formula One, actually, also the Red Bull official podcast and Sky's Formula One podcast. So we're up there with some really big names. So I kind of need a favour, really. The next round is all about getting people to vote for your favourite sports podcast. We are the only motorbike podcast up for an award this year. So if you're listening to this, you should vote for us, right? Because it's motorbikes, isn't it? The links are on our social media sites under Instagram and Facebook. If not, just search for Sports Podcast Awards and we are under the motorsport category. I'm counting on you. Get on with it. Right, catch you later. Let's get on with it.
We met through Twitter.
Through Twitter? Were you shouting at each other? Don't ride like that!
We both had the same bikes at the time, Ducati Supersport S. Somebody commented on my post and Lara's post, so you two should speak because, you know, you're both girls, you're both blonde, and you both have the same bike. And so I organised a ride out in North Wales, to which Lara came to for the first time. That's how we met. 5 years ago, I think. So social media, yeah, it was brilliant for that.
I get confused for being you. People are like, oh, you Maja. I was like, no, but, you know, I'll take that.
Equally, for me, they go, oh, I watched that video you posted on YouTube. And I'm like, no, that's Lara, that's not me. I'm Maja, and I'm a motorcycle tour guide. I would call myself an adventurer on a smaller scale, but I do class adventure as anything that is just exciting. It might just be around the corner from where I am rather than going to the other side of the world, overlanding or something like that. Oh, I have turned 50 years old this year. You know, it's kind of like a next stage of my life, really. The last 5 years have been developing the business of touring. Before that, I had a very different lifestyle, and I'm sort of embracing the whole new chapter of my life and just loving it, really. I've got a son who's now in Sydney. He gave me the best Christmas present ever because he's telling me he's coming back to the UK next year, which means I'll see a lot more of him. That makes me very happy. And I'm based in North Wales, but originally I'm from Slovenia. Moved to the UK about 30 years ago.
You're a very experienced rider, aren't you, as well? You've had advanced training. You do the blood bike stuff.
I've passed my big bike license 8 years ago. And I think in those years I've probably racked up more miles than an average person that's been riding all their life and they're in the same age as me now. I'm a blood biker. I have been riding for them very intensely for a long time, but in the last 2 years, I've kind of backed off a bit just because I'm not in the country very much and I don't have the time so much. So I support them in a different way, but I don't do much riding for them right now.
Laura, would you like to introduce yourself? Sorry, Lara. I've got a cousin called Lara. It's not as if I'm unused to the name. Lara, would you like to introduce yourself?
No problem, Dave.
Funnily enough, my nieces and nephew call me Dave. When my oldest niece was little, she couldn't say Clive, so she used to say, Uncle Dave! And I'm known as Uncle Dave now, so welcome.
What am I? I'm an engineer by trade. That's the day job. Bike-wise, I adore everything to do with motorbikes. If I was going to really reflect on my life so far, if you take all the layers down of career-hungry business individual, it's just, I just want to mess around on bikes. And I have a very, very fierce sense of competition. The idea of rubbing elbows with someone trying to fight for half an inch of apex up the first exit at Cadwell is perfect to me. So racing. So pretty much cut my teeth on track after realising that it probably wasn't the right thing to start chasing those thrills on the road. So track days led to track bikes, and then track bikes led to a bit of racing. And then since racing, you either run out of money or run out of talent. I'll let you choose which one. I reached a peak point where I was like, do you know what? This is amazing. I've got a pile of trophies, but I don't think I can take this much further without dedicating more of my time to this. The next step was to go, right, what else is in this world? So you can start flat tracking because that's a nice way to ride around in a circle, and then try off-roading because I feel like there's more of the world to explore than just racing to circuits all the time. There's stuff on your doorstep that I really wanted to kind of tap into. So I've now turned into a bit of an off-road adventure as well. I guess the final bit is the journalism bit, I guess, in the sense that I set up a YouTube channel because I wanted to spend more time on bikes and a bit less time at work, just a better balance. And that led to teaching myself to talk to a camera, as in develop my own YouTube channel. And then I now work for Bike World as one of their presenters.
So have you ridden Speedway as well, did Clive say?
I've not raced it.
But you've ridden a Speedway bike?
Yes, it was a 125 at Buxton Raceway with the Ride and Skid It team. So that was one of my, it looks recent to you videos, but it was a while ago now. But I just, tried Speedway. It's odd because the pegs are offset. It makes sense for turning left.
How easily did you take to flat track racing and Speedway racing, to that kind of style of cornering?
There's a level of stupid. One of the plugs in my head comes out and you ride it out. But I've had good instruction. So with Pete Boast at the Champions Flat Track School, that's the first step of me giggling massively when he's just like, do a figure of 8. And it's totally the opposite of what I've learned, as in I'm used to being under the bike, like, elbow draggy Marquez style, obviously. But actually the flat track and the new journey is like elbows high and getting over the bike and pushing underneath you. And once you realise, when you get that trust in the mud, you're like, oh, I'm not sliding. Oh, I kind of am, but it's okay. And I'm still upright and I'm still cornering. It's that making that trust and connection with your tyres at that point, and then it kind of unlocks a new world. It's brilliant.
I would love to do that.
I am desperate to have a go at flat track or Speedway. My dad used to take me to Speedway, Brandon Bees, Coventry Bees, as I think they are now, when I was before I was 10, and I think that was one of my first motorcycle loves, really. So I was watching that video today and I'm thinking, yeah, I've got to go and do that. And it's not expensive. You get 4 hours of tuition for about, I think it was £130.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the good thing about the off-road world, really. I went to my first Speedway event, so seeing it for the first time at Redcar Speedway up in Teesside. Everyone had umbrellas. I was like, the weather's fine. Like, what? Why? And then I realised, came round the oval, and then everyone brings out their umbrellas and hides. And I'm like, oh, okay, here it comes. And it's just like... absolutely smothered in mud. Brilliant.
I had an opportunity to go to Ice Speedway in Germany, in Insel, and that was just so bizarre for me. I've never watched Speedway. I don't, like Clara's got lots of different styles of riding. I was very much a road rider. I went to see Speedway and they have big nails in their, big spikes in their tyres, and most of them were Russian and just completely nuts, just going around that circle. Like, I've never seen anything like that before. It was just a very good experience. Luckily, didn't need umbrellas because snow doesn't kick off quite the same as mud.
I really recommend, if you haven't actually been to watch Speedway, and I'm sure flat track is the same, it's very, very exciting racing. I think Speedway is 4 laps and they take about 15 seconds each, so a race lasts about a minute. It's one of the most exciting minutes or thereabouts that you'll ever spend watching a motorsport event. Yeah, absolutely brilliant, and it's not crazy expensive to get into too. Go Workington Comets. We should go up there one night. No, I'll take you up there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, Speedway needs a lot more support, to be honest. So it's good to get more people involved.
Yeah, it's really struggling. I mean, the Workington Comets closed for a while. Somebody has got them back up, but on a different track somewhere. It is really struggling financially. So go and support your local team, wherever that is. So, Maya, you haven't done any racing?
No, my approach to riding is very different to Lara's, I think. I am very cautious and careful, and I go quite slow for the first few sessions. And then I kind of, something clicks in my head, and I go, all right, I get this. This is fun. I went to do California Superbike School. The first day, I was basically driving Miss Daisy, going round at 50 miles an hour, sort of looking out for cars and animals, and just could not get out of my road riding head. It was hilarious. I mean, I learned an awful lot. It was a fantastic experience, but I was definitely the slowest in the group. However, day two, it was absolutely pouring down with rain, and I was overtaking everybody because, well, I live in North Wales, so either you ride in rain or you just don't go out. And it was quite interesting how a bit of rain actually makes me go faster. Most of my customers actually always laugh because they repeat this, they know me. They go, how do you go faster in the rain? In the road, they all slow down and I lose them, so I have to wait for them. But I guess that's just experience. When I was at Cadwell Park, like I said, I've learnt a lot. I did enjoy it, but I didn't get it. It's like you're going around the same circle over and over and over again. This is not fun for me. No, I've done no racing for me.
Cadwell looks to me to be a really scary circuit. There's the rise where your front wheel inevitably comes off the tarmac, but the corners, it isn't really so much of a loop, is it? It's such a twisty, turny course.
It is, and I kind of learned it at the end, and I enjoyed it, but it took me a long time to get there. My instructor did zoom in the camera, and he saw there was like a teeny tiny gap between my front wheel and the tarmac on that hill. So, I'm going to take that as a wheelie, although you wouldn't really see it. It was a great learning experience, but like I said, for me to ride that over and over again, not learning what I'm learning there, just to go as fast as I can, it's not the thrill for me. It's very much Lara's mindset. Every time we go out together, there will be a point where she'll just buzz off. She'll wait for me at the end, but I go, no, I'll go at my pace. I'm okay.
Lara, you described yourself as very competitive. Do you think being competitive just gives you a little bit more of an edge when it comes to riding quickly?
Yes. I think in any sport, athletes pretty much do their PBs as a result of competition. You train as an Olympian and you'll be at your very best there. Well, at least it gets recorded there. I think competition and the desire to beat, I guess, others in a way. But the most important thing sometimes about racing is you race the track, not other people. You have to keep that measurement there. I think being competitive helps you just find that extra point something percent out of the desire to succeed. And I think that helps significantly. You've got to have a drive somewhere and that grit somewhere. And whether it's competition or just the desire to be the very best you can in that scenario, I think that does help. But there are ways of excelling. Competition's one of them, isn't it?
Are you horribly competitive in all walks of life? Would it be horrible to play Monopoly with you?
I've had some feedback recently from my significant other who said it's not a competition. Whatever we were competing against, I think he was tired and I was like, well, I'm even more tired than you are. So I think I have a default response that I need to recognise and rein in sometimes. But in the way that's who I am. That's what drives me to push further and do more stuff.
Maya, did you get into biking quite late or did you have a break when you had the family?
I had a moped when I was in my teens, like a 50cc Tomos Silver Bullet. It was beautiful. And I used to go to school on it and it was very cool. Growing up in Slovenia, or Yugoslavia at the time, then it obviously got independent with Slovenia, and it's on the border with Italy and Austria, and all the, a lot of Germans and Italians come to the Croatian coastline for the summer. And I remember as a child and also then as a teenager, sitting in the back of mum and dad's car, going to the seaside in horrible traffic, in the heat, and all these bikes just whizzing past. And I thought, I really, really, really want to have a bike. Then I moved to the UK, and the plan was that my husband at the time and I were going to both do the license, get a couple of Ducatis, because Ducati was my heart, that's what I had to have. And we could ride to Slovenia in the summer. Then I realised about a month later that actually I was pregnant. So that kind of got put on hold and family life took over. But that's what life is about, right? And priorities. So family first. Then my son turned 16 or 17 and we had this conversation about me wanting to ride a bike and get the license, and obviously, saying, you've got your dad, obviously, and you're old enough to make your own lunch now if something happens to me, and I'd really love to do this with your blessing. So he goes, Mom, just go for it. And that was really. I passed my test, and I cover an enormous amount of miles, different years, but we're looking at probably pushing 20,000, just because I do long tours, whether that's on my bike or on a hired bike or all alone. But I really am happiest when I'm on my bike. When my son told me he's not coming back from Australia and he's going to settle here, I can honestly say that motorbike saved me from some, really dark days, because he's just lovely. So I missed him terribly. And every time I had a day where I just couldn't get out of bed because I was missing him, or I was feeling depressed, and you know what winter's like in the UK, I would go out on a bike. It didn't matter if it was pouring down with rain, if it was 3 degrees. I just laid out. And every time I came back, I had a big grin on my face, and I've forgotten all about how I felt in the morning. The desire was always there to have a motorbike. It just didn't happen until much later in my life.
I'm a bit different. I get depressed if my kids are still in the house. I tend to keep my head under the duvet until they've cleared off. I'd fucking pay them to go to Australia. Honestly, I'd pay the airfare. I'm joking, of course, boys.
Is he, though?
Laura, you got into bikes when you were much younger, I understand, although your family wasn't really a biking family.
Yeah, my dad said one of his biggest regrets was bringing that damn moped home, because that really does sit in the very transformational stage of me realising what it was like when I didn't have to pedal anymore. So he bought a beige Yamaha Pasola, like a 50cc beige little step-through bike with a basket on the front and a box on the back, and a little open, I think they call them piss pot helmets, like just an open face helmet.
Noel still wears one.
Yeah, I took the basket off because that wasn't cool. And on the box, the white box on the back, I'd written, if I could go faster, I would. Grew up in Jersey, so I lived there till I was about 20. I buzzed up around the island with one of them. Before that, I was riding push bikes, a little like mountain bike around my friends, and I'd put a piece of cardboard on the to rub on the spokes on the back, so it'd sound like a single. And I think I just had an early obsession with MotoGP. So around like the border of my bedroom, I'd cut up pictures of MCN and all my favourite races up there, and there was just a genuine joy of motorsport and wheels and movement and trains and planes and everything that kind of fires me up as an engineer, and then connection with movement. It's just like I feel like I belong on two wheels. And a little bit nod to Maja in that sometimes a sense of peace when you leave work, and even if you've just got to commute home, it's just the feeling of not sitting in a cage. It's just sitting on two wheels and having that chug and pull and just, that's better. Just that feeling.
Had you pestered him for that moped then to get a little bit of independence?
No, it just arrived.
It just arrived?
Yeah, my dad likes little wheel and deal, He's a carpenter, so he noticed it in the discardables of a house he was doing up, and picked it out the bin after the owner said, yeah, I was just getting rid of it. So here we go. It didn't need anything, actually, just the air in the tyres. And I raced it around my garden before, not raced, I attempted to move it, navigate it around my garden. And then, escaped to the open road after that.
You were into bikes before your dad bought the moped home?
No, moped was the first bike, by definition, by engine.
And do you remember the first time that you rode that moped around the garden and how that made you feel?
Yeah. I actually remember, I think it was the CBT more, so passing my CBT on it and then being allowed on the road. I remember that connection very vividly of, oh, freedom has finally happened. And I think with bikes, you get that earlier than perhaps cars. The garden was almost like I was being fenced in. I was so desperate to get it out of 12 miles an hour that was the max before I threw it into a wall at the end of our fence. Whereas the open road at the CBT, when we'd escaped from the car park, and then I could this is 30 miles an hour. The heavens have opened, we're good.
What's it like to whiz round Jersey on a moped? Is it as idyllic as it sounds?
Yeah, it's cute. It's a beautiful place to grow up. My parents met over there, but there is a 40 mile an hour speed limit across the island. There are places where you can stick to 40 miles an hour, a beautiful place to look and see and observe the scenery, but it's almost like entire green lanes and a lot of beautifully detached houses down private driveways. But yeah, it's stunning.
It's funny that you both grew up with a bit of moped culture, because I grew up with moped culture. All my friends had mopeds, whether they liked bikes or not, and I don't see it so much now. It kind of disappeared. I live out in the countryside a bit, and 5 miles out of the nearest town, and we all were craving to have our first moped, just to have that independence. But it's really disappeared now, I think, hasn't it?
I think in Europe is still very much that culture alive because of the weather. Obviously, in the UK, it's becoming more expensive. I think the younger generation are just not that keen on motorbikes. It's a very different landscape, I noticed. When I had my little moped, most of the boys had Vespas, and I was desperate for one. And my dad said, "You'll never have a big bike. It's only taken me then another 30 years to get there." But when I travel around in Europe and you see all the little villages and the coastal towns, everybody's on mopeds and scooters. And you're right, in the UK, that's very much, well, gone, really. I was a real petrol head before I actually got my first real motorbike. He used to take me to car rallies and he would swap his cars regularly, and we would always talk about it and watch Formula One and things like that. Once I got my Ducati, that all fell aside. Trying to introduce my son to that world, he's not interested at all. He's now 25 years old, doesn't have a driving license, isn't interested in motorbikes. And a lot of his friends are in a similar situation.
I've not encouraged any of my 3 boys to get on a motorbike just because I remember what I was like when I was their age.
The 2 highest risks, I think, is like late teens, I guess, wherever the legal age is, on bikes for the first time. And then there's people that are reliving their youth and coming back to it after like a midlife hiatus. So that's the risk category as well, because the roads have changed and your appetite for risk has changed and your awareness has changed. And I get the opportunity to occasionally give advice to parents worried about their kids getting on bikes. It's like, well, just pay for a little bit for them to get extra training, get a bit conditioned and wear the right gear. Whatever you're doing, just please wear the right gear, because most of the time, and the airbag technology has moved on a little bit, so you can wear a little bag over it, and there are ways of keeping yourself safe, I think. And then for those returning to bikes, please just go and get one-to-one training. You've got the cash. If you've bought a bike, go and get someone just to help you, not pick your favourite lid or buy your favourite new pair of boots. Just like go and train you on the road, teach you the few basics, and that will help a lot, I think, as well.
I always recommend advanced training to people. It was very good, and I still ride by it now. There's 3 or 4 things that really stuck with me, like seeing into a corner, getting back on the power when the bend opens up. Definitely made me a safer rider. And it's that attitude that you're responsible for your own safety. Don't blame the other silly buggers on the road, because you need to see what they're doing and anticipate what they're doing. Even look through the window at drivers. Have they actually looked at me? Have they seen me?
What you're saying is absolutely spot on. It's having responsibility for you and all the others on the road, because you are more at risk to get seriously hurt if something goes wrong. Therefore, you have to think for all the others as well. I keep saying that everybody that's doing driving lessons should spend a day on a motorbike or do a CBT, just so they can understand the vulnerability of motorbikes, and it makes them look around better. I mean, until I got on the bike properly, I hardly ever looked well back over my shoulder when I was turning. Now, I don't move until I check all the corners that I can when I'm in the car. And just a day on a motorbike, I think, changes your perception very much, and it would make a much safer road use for everybody, really.
I like your idea, Mara. I think some people are very dangerous on 2 wheels, though, so let's do it in VR at least. A lot of modern car designs are designed to get you more subdued and more in a bubble and make you more of an environment, and they're displaying more screens. So nod to the fact that cars are getting more insulated in the way that manufacturers are offering that to you. So we just have to be a little bit even more aware now. But in the same breath, cars are becoming more aware of their surroundings through receptors, really, isn't it? So you're now a hazard in people's wing mirrors, and Teslas will pick you up as a bike and perhaps change behaviours. And in one of our cars recently, it has night vision, basically, so it flashes up when there's pedestrians that aren't lit. So I think there's actually there's almost like a transition of, although you can't rely on the car and you must rely on the driver, but there's more technology that's actually possibly helping us as well.
And also, just slow down. Don't go so fast. No. It hurts less when you do fall off. So tell us a little bit more about your racing, Lara.
I had the opportunity to start CB500 racing, must have been about 2017. So my first race was at Brands Hatch with 40 other CB500s right on their launch limit, as it were. They called it the Sound of Thunder, and just remembering the lights go out on all of us. I just need to remember the name of the corner now, but I was fighting for that space in the first right-hander at Brands. That was quite an addiction, a feeling. And I remember going around 2/3 around the track going, I'm still alive, it's happening, it's real, I'm not last. It's amazing. And that bug has stayed. I did a few seasons on a CB500, then did opportunities to ride other people's bikes, basically. So Alan Knight of Knight Road Racing let me ride his Ducati 1098 initially. That was a bit of a step up from a CB500. Probably best described that bike rode me. It was more of a teleport from corner to corner, particularly at Rockingham. I was like, okay, let's hold on. But I've probably found my best laps on a super twin, so like a Ducati Monster, but in a almost like sporty fairing, similar to like Kawasaki ER 650s, I think. So kind of that genre. I then really had a lot of fun on a Yamaha R6. Initially quite intimidated by racing that, like is pushing 120, 125 brake. I did some quite bad parking on that a few times, but the connection with the track was phenomenal. My best lap round Donny was on an R6. And then I really connected finally with a Kramer 690 single. So basically the same engine as in the Husky 701s and the KTM 690s, but a Kramer is a dedicated track bike that you buy just for the track. So rather than like a road bike converted like an R6 would be, a Kramer's are off the shelf, I'm track ready now. And I raced that with the Kramer BSB team, but it was either NG and a little bit of the classic motorcycle racing club, because they still have the Supermono class. So I think it was a nod to World Superbikes, where there was a Supermono class, and so I raced on that. That covers about 5 or 6 years really of really culminating in one of the best weekends of my life was at Cadwell Park on a Kramer. When you were talking to Maja about experiencing Cadwell and how it's a complicated circuit. It's a circuit of two halves. Just the way you connect with that circuit and the way you move to the bottom of the mountain and through the hall bends and around the old hairpin is just one hell of an experience, that circuit. So yeah, that's my racing career roughly.
Have you seen Cadwell, Clive?
Yeah, I have. I've never actually been, but I've watched racing. Yeah.
Glad you pointed out that. It's called the mountain for obvious reasons. It's a ridiculously steep climb in a way, rise, isn't it? Do you ride it in a way that you're trying to limit how much you take off at the top of it, or do you just go for it?
Those with a bit of motocross lineage would approach it like a jump. You realise how big it is when you're at the bottom of it. We're cautious when we are approaching the unknown. There's a place called Deer's Leap at Alton Park, which is the same thing. It's a big old crest. In the same way you'd slow down because you can see a crest on the road, there's still a part of me that's like, you'll save yourself if you roll off the throttle. But eventually, as you learn to trust the fact that the track remains the same and that you use the marshals to go, is there anyone again badly parked over the other side of it, you can just let rip. But it's the secret of making it a corner. The thing to remember with the mountain itself is that it's not straight. You are constantly making a bend, which is why you'll see riders hang to the right of it, because their bike will step left and then they'll come round the corner. It's a continued corner, and the sooner you connect with that flow of really hard braking and then the climb up and then the flick right into it, it can be really smooth and beautiful. If you go really hard right and you go on the right hand side of the mountain, you'll get more height and jump if you wish for that. So it's a good overtaking maneuver, but the nice smooth one is on the left hand side of it.
All the bikes you described to me earlier just sound terrifying. Did any of those bikes scare you?
The 1098 was a bit of a weapon because the traction control didn't work, and not that we need these things, but in the wet it's quite nice. And that was a very raw machine. And the R6, when the tyres weren't worn properly, that, it gave me a bit of a slap now and then. But no, I don't. Oh, did they scare me? I don't know. I'd probably be lying if I said no, actually. I think it's a healthy respect. Like a racehorse you've got to respect the animal, although it's a mechanical beast. There's a way of making yourself feel more comfortable when you've maintained it yourself and you've done all the right preconditions to make sure it's safe. But there are times when there'll just be bits on a circuit where the rear wheel will just go blah, and you're like, okay, let's slow down a bit now.
So, Lara, at some point then during your racing, you decided to start making YouTube videos. That led to you working with Bike World TV, which, let's face it, is the only credible motorbike program on public television right now. Obviously, Chris Northover does an awful lot of it, and he's an absolutely brilliant presenter, fantastic rider, knows all sorts of bikes, and you were invited to join that team, and you do an equally fantastic job. How was it when you got the call?
I was in Plymouth at the time, and I just got this call out of the blue from the producer. I was like, really? This is cool. At the time, I was actually doing some filming for, it was like Motorbike TV with Tom Woodrow, so something a little bit more low-key, doing our own mini version. I was quite busy with him. And so I told Al, this was, where I was filming, and he's like, all right, don't worry about it. I'll maybe catch you in a year or so. And I was like, no. This is Bike World. Like, you're not going anywhere, Al. Like, let me come to you and let's make this a real thing. It was a huge privilege, actually, a huge privilege to see the work had paid off. It's a classic example on what you can use to inspire others. Like, just start doing your favourite thing, start doing what you like doing and see what happens. Like, I had no aspirations. I think in my goal, I write goals down every year, but one of them was like to be a Top Gear presenter. You know, that's my goal. And then you start doing things that might feel a bit more like that. Hence why, if you're going to do that, you're going to have to learn to ride really well and you need to talk to a camera. So I did those things and talked about it. So you never know where it ends up. It's like you're doing a podcast starts things and chatting to Maja and our adventures starts things. It's connects. And so don't just go, oh, I wish I did this. It was the manifestation of I did this and now this has happened. Who knows what else is going to happen, but I'm enjoying the ride.
Maja, talk to us about your tours, because you do tours in the UK and it looks like you're branching out into Europe and further afield as well. So it's Maja's motorcycleadventures.co.uk. Maja spelt Maja.
The Slovenian way. During COVID lockdown, I had a business which flatlined like many others and stayed the first 3 weeks at home, enjoying the sunshine, doing the gardening, thinking, I could get used to this retirement lark. We had time to think about what I actually enjoy, what I want to do with my life. Am I actually happy doing where I'm at? I was very honest with myself, which was quite hard at the time. And I thought, well, actually, my heart isn't in the business anymore. So why don't I just wind this up and see what else there is that I can do? And talking to people that I admire in business and some coaches and things like that, I've discovered this thing called the Venn diagram, which is, what you're good at, what the world needs and what you get paid for. In the end, I've always been traveling in whatever capacity I was able to do that. I enjoy people. And obviously, I knew by then that it had to involve motorbikes. So that kind of came together into, why don't I just do a tour and see what happens? This was also on the back of me being very active on Twitter at the time. And people were constantly messaging me saying, we're coming to North Wales. Where can we go for a ride? And I would just say, tell you what, I'm free that day. I'll meet you. I'll show you where to go and let's do it together. And that was also a great experience for me of learning to become a better rider and see how I managed a group and things like that. Once we were allowed out, I put out a post saying a day's tour of North Wales for, I can't remember, 50 quid or whatever it was. People turned up and, they paid me the money. We brought our own lunches and coffee flasks because nothing was opened yet. Had a fantastic day. Then he went on to, oh, look, the world's opening up. We can do a weekend away. So then we did a whole weekend, 2 nights, 3 nights. And that was then expanded into Europe. I am now mostly all over Europe and very little in the UK, which I need to adjust that balance a little bit. Ultimately, for me, it doesn't matter where I am, as long as I'm on a bike traveling and seeing something different. And I derive real pleasure of showing people the fantastic roads, the beautiful views, the sights that they wouldn't normally see, not the most obvious things that everybody knows about, but doing more research and finding those little gems that they go, yes, this was different to anything else we've done before. And seeing the satisfied and hopefully slightly tired faces in the evening when we're having a dinner and a glass of wine or two or beer and having the conversations, that really gives me great pleasure. And it feels that I am doing a service rather than I'm running a business.
This is very interesting because we've often talked about, have we often talked about it or have I talked about it with other people, Clive? TAMP tours.
We have talked about TAMP tours and a lot of people have written to us and saying, why don't you do some TAMP tours?
My worry has always been that it might ruin motorcycling for me, but listening to you, Maja, it sounds quite the opposite.
The reason Maja, it hasn't ruined motorcycling for Maja is because she's a nice, sociable person who enjoys being with people.
I know
whereas you, Mr. Tom, aren't.
Yeah. How do you cope with the different levels of skill from the people in your groups?
It's a guided tour. However, I sort of prefer to say it's a accompanied tour because I don't insist that we ride as a group all the time. Everybody gets GPX files to use with their sat nav that they like and know how to use, which means that if there is somebody that's very slow, somebody that wants to go faster, they can, because they know where we're going, and they'll just wait for us at a certain point. If I say this is a really fun road and there is no police, so you can go a little bit faster, then some of them might actually go and do that. The first day is always the hardest. Different people, different characters, different riding abilities. So I spend the first day watching everybody to see how competent they are. The slowest and least experienced person I will ask to ride right behind me. So 2 reasons. I can keep an eye on them. I can give them some advice and, saying, follow my lines. And then I explain why we go like this and why I've done a certain thing. The feedback I always get is that was fantastic. I've learned so much. And they become a better rider within the week that we're out, or 2 weeks. Because when you're on a bike every day, consistently for several numbers of days, you will improve. Majority of my customers, or all of them actually, come because they want to go on a holiday and they don't want to do any of the thinking. Usually you have a bunch of friends who go on tour, and there's always one that organizes everything and does all the heavy lifting, and everybody's complaining about it. What happens with the guys that come to my tours, they're happy, they pay their fee, they don't have to think, and I've basically become their mother for a couple of weeks. It literally comes to the point that we're stopping and going, does anybody need a toilet before we carry on? I exaggerate a bit, but you get the idea. Recently, I was invited to join a tour in Spain, and I saw that, and I went, oh, I get the value of my service even more now, because all of my customers are completely capable of doing all this on their own, but they don't want to. If you go on holiday where you don't have to do the thinking, what happens now is I actually have got existing groups of friends that book me every year. So there are very few tours I have to sell to newcomers, if you like. We finish one tour and they go around next year, can we book this slot? And then we'll figure out the destination as the time goes on.
I guess a lot of people that listen to this podcast have done tours and adventures on their own, but there are so many people that you meet that ride bikes and they've never even left the country. Just to go to France, it's so easy to get on the Channel, and the next minute you're in France and you can ride through the whole of Europe. A lot of people don't have that level of confidence to do that sort of thing, do they?
I was like that. I have a reputation for being somebody who doesn't like to go on guided trips, but actually that was my first foray into Europe. It wasn't officially a guided trip, but one of our friends was very keen on coming up with a great route, spend all winter looking for squiggly lines on a map, and he pretty much just reminded me of it, Maja, when you were talking about your trip. He pretty much took care of everything for us, and it was as good as being on a guided trip, wasn't it, Clive? And actually it was a great introduction to Europe and a great introduction to that style of touring, wasn't it?
We were so pathetic we didn't even know which country we were in most of the time.
I just gauged it on how many cuckoo clocks I'd seen, and even that I got wrong. Turns out cuckoo clocks exist in Switzerland and Austria. Who knew that?
For me, going to Europe, I absolutely love it. That feels to me like a playground anyway. Growing up on the continent, if you like, I'd hitchhike and I'd cycle into different countries just because we were students and he had no money but time. And now there are no borders, immediately I come into France and I go, I'm home. The whole of Europe feels like home to me. And I get a lot of riders that go across the channel for the first time, and it's that cushion of confidence that I'm in a group, I don't have to do it on my own.
So that brings us round to you guys starting to venture off-road, your big trip to the Balkans on the Trans-Euro Trail. How did that decision come around? Was that a drunken conversation in a pub one evening?
It was an idea that I've kind of been thinking, oh, that would be a fun thing to do. Can I get to Slovenia on tech routes alone? Not that I even knew at the time how to go off-road on a motorbike. And it was just something that was niggling in the back of my mind. I started off-roading maybe 2 years ago. I bought KTM 890 Adventure, and as you do, it was my touring bike, but also I decided to do some green lanes around North Wales. My other half is experienced off-roader. He had Henry at the time. I was learning and thinking, yeah, I can do this. And I was telling Lara this one evening in a pub with a glass of wine. Lara said, I'll come with you. And we just went, cheers, done.
What's your version of that story, Lara?
Noting the 10-year difference between us, I have had the opportunity to do a bit of navel gazing, and I either continue in the joy of the rat race in my engineering career. I was like, actually, why don't you just go and do something different? So I've asked for some time off work, and I'll just figure out my holidays accordingly, get on a bike on the 1st of August 2025 and go travelling. If I don't, I'll wake up in 5 years in the same place. So let's go and do something different.
How much time have you set aside then for this trip?
2 months. Originally, we were going to go to Slovenia, but we've now extended it to include the Balkans because everybody's telling us how amazing the trails are there, and we've got the time, so why not?
And what bikes are you taking?
Inspired by Mark and Jamie, Honda CRF rallies are absolute mountain goats. Maya and I went and rode them around the kind of Wales Tet and realised how capable they are, and they carry everything. There's some limitations on tyres on really grassy stuff that you'd need a different enduro bike to get up, but the rest of the time they're a very competent, very capable bike that will take you all over the world if you want to. CRFs for the win. So I never thought I'd have so much joy out of so little horsepower. It's about that single cylinder chug 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 rather than that top end apex hunting speed.
Yeah, this is one thing that people don't seem to understand, that if you have more power on an off-road bike, you just end up spinning your back wheel and it makes your life even more difficult.
Considering the weight as well, I've gone off-road on my KTM and I called it like a 3 pickup bike because the fourth time I'm done. I can't do it anymore. It's too heavy. On the CRF, you go, oh, here it goes again. Just lift it, fine, carry on. Can do that 20 times a day. Hopefully you don't fall off that many times, but it doesn't exhaust you in the same way as a big bike.
These are 300s.
300 rally, so extended tank, and then a kind of a better windshield, an engine bash plate and some handguards, basically. We might make a few tweaks to them, but nothing too serious. Pretty much ready to go.
And do you find physically they're a good fit for you both?
I think so, yeah. I love standing up on them. That's my favourite thing, standing up. That feels about right.
I've got a 250L and I've had a 250 Rally. The 250 Rally was a much better fit for me than, I'm about 6 foot, and the Rally was a much better fit than the L. I found it a really good fit.
You get a wider seat on the Rally as well, so it's a little bit more comfortable. I've got the Rally Raid suspension on mine, which actually lifts it up about 2 inches as well, but I'm 6'2", so that's not really been an issue for me.
Yeah, I'm 5'10". Maya, you're the same, aren't you? They fit about right. So we're very lucky to be supported by Honda. They're going to give us 2 rallies, and the major modifications that I'm going to look into, and I've chatted to Honda about this. So we'd just like some upgraded handguards, something a bit more resilient, because sometimes the plastic on them a bit more vulnerable, particularly if you're going to drop it. We may look into suspension stuff because standard off-the-shelf suspension can be a bit pogo sticky, and for long distance in our backs and our bums we might like something a bit more plush. The other vulnerability is just because of extended clutch use. You know, if you ride on the road it's not so bad, but when you're really pushing the clutch to get your speed up, we probably need to either not, as in just have a spare clutch pack, you know, to go just to keep that resilience in the bikes for a longer distance. Other than that, it's probably about it in terms of major modifications.
A wine rack and a coffee machine now.
Although Maya will pull a face now, we will be camping. My military background means I'm pretty damn good at doing some technical camping, so I will be primarily making sure Maya is as comfortable as possible. So about a ratio of 4 nights camp to 1 night's Airbnb. We'll see where we get to.
Well, that's still under debate.
Do you find it an uncomfortable night's sleep?
I haven't done it in many years, put it that way. I'm kind of at a point where I really like nice hotels with ensuite and coffee machines and all that. And the idea of camping, it does terrify me somewhat. At the same time, I appreciate that if we are in the middle of nowhere and we are finding these beautiful places. So I said to Lara, and don't spoil my illusion or I might not be camping, but I've got this illusion of a mountain in the Alps with a beautiful lake and a bit of woodlands, and I'm parked there and we got the tent, and in the morning I go for a swim, all of that. So, you know, think, oh, that would be a really cool experience. I don't want to miss that. So the 4 nights of camping, that's what I'm envisaging. I do know that it's not going to be like that in reality, but I will probably put my foot down at camping if it is cold and wet. Again, I'm making myself sound like a right princess. I'm not. As a rule, I don't like camping. Going on this adventure, it's going to be part of it, and we don't want to be spending a fortune on this trip. It's all about being economical and enjoying everything as much as we can. So camping will be part of it, but also the experience of waking up in the morning in a place that you can't find a hotel room. We did agree on rest days we will have 2 nights in a hotel. The rest day you do what you want, but we are sleeping in hotels for those days.
I've got reluctant camping friends, and it's where you camp. That's what's going to win them over, I always think.
Other than bike and sourcing wine for the trip, what other preparations have you been doing?
We spent 7 days training in Wales. The best way to get ready for a trip is what I'd call a shakedown, which is get out and ride. find out what fits, what wobbles, what moves, what's uncomfortable, what you're missing. How are you going to move your kit around? One of the things we do in the army is we get issued with like webbing and kind of a heavy bag of Bergen to wear. And you soon realise that where you want your water and where you want your first aid kit and where you want your magazines, they have to be sequenced so you can get in and get out and get what you need. But Maja, we need to pick the weather. Apart from we're probably going to go and scratch around a quarry near yours on our beaters, we need to actually go camping. So I think you're delaying this as far right as possible, but we will have to do the camp and at least set up one tent and then put that on the bike and see how the bikes ride with the weight on and fully load ourselves and see what's weird. And because they can get quite back heavy and what we need to adjust from there. So apart from all the kit, and I've done a lot of Googling, I need to read. There was a book actually you recommended about adventuring on bikes.
Chris Scott's probably.
Yeah, so I need to read that. And apart from just mechanically preparing them, we just need to go and abuse them a bit and put all our kit on them.
I would say, Maja, you're in really good hands because I go on tech trips with a guy in the military. I'm shy of saying Joe's rank because I'll get it slightly wrong, and there's nothing worse than getting a military person's rank wrong. But it's a whole new level camping with somebody out of the military because they're looking at the wind and the clouds and where the sun's coming up. It's unbelievable. I thought I was good at picking spots, but he takes all these other different scenarios into consideration. Are you like that, Lara?
No, not brilliant, actually. I think mine's probably better than that. But at least I can find out what's sheltered and do something sensible. I think between the two of us, we'll find good spots. Clive, you look desperate to show us the brand.
I'm showing you my Sea to Summit Etherlite XT insulated. This camping mat is insanely expensive.
Is it reassuringly expensive?
It's reassuringly expensive. You could actually buy a bed cheaper than this sleeping mat, but it is as comfortable as a bed. Absolutely remarkable.
I'm a keen camper, but I'm still trying to refine it. I have terrible night's sleep camping, and I've got a pretty good camping mat, but it's obviously not the right mat. So I need to try one of these. I've got a Thermarest Neo Air, and it's too thin. So I think I wake up in the night paranoid that I'm going to fall off the edge of it, or I have fallen off the edge of it. So I would say go big, really. Go square or, rectangular.
With motorcycle travel, it doesn't matter how heavy stuff is. It's not on your back, it's on your bike, isn't it? It's how it
What it packs down to.
How it packs down, yeah. Get a down sleeping bag. Absolutely. Just get one. Just spend the money. But we've also I was looking up, we did some episodes on multi-day trip planning. This is when we first started out. It was like our second season. Nobody would talk to us. So we did 3 episodes on multi-day trip planning. Season 2, episodes 7, 8 and 9.
Okay.
So have a listen to those.
You haven't asked for advice, but we're giving it. But my biggest thing that I've started to take away now is a blanket, and it sounds crazy, but a little cheap travel blanket from the garage. Having a blanket in the bottom of the tent creates a completely different atmosphere in the tent.
A blankie?
It's like having a carpeted tent. It's wonderful. It's great with an alfresco picnic.
Yeah, I love it. In it together, it'd be really cute. Little glasses of wine. Amazing.
And chopping board. It took me 10 years to discover the chopping board, the tiny A5 kind of size chopping board.
I'm going to introduce him to restaurants at some point.
I did try and warm up the roast on the header pipe of the CRF.
It's a very thin header pipe, that one. You need like a 404 bank of headers, don't you, really? The other thing is a chair. We all kind of fought against having a chair. There's ones you can get that pack down quite small now. And I've got like a cheap Chinese copy of the very expensive one. And it does make a difference, having somewhere nice to sit. Will there be a film made of this epic 2-month trip?
There will be something. We are planning on recording as much as we can. How we'll edit it and make it into something is still a question because we're not taking laptops with us. We need to still figure out where all the footage will go. Will it be done whilst we're away by somebody else, or are we going to get home and then work on it? So that's still something that we haven't finalized. But there will definitely be film or videos of the whole trip, yes.
What about the route? Are you going to just go in one direction and then transport the bikes back? Or is it going to be a circular route that you get as far as you can in the first month and then travel back in the second month? How's that going to work?
The plan is that we ride till the last week and then we finish our trip in Ljubljana in Slovenia. where we swap the CRS for 2 Africa Twins and come back on the road.
Why do we do that?
We need to make friends with people at Honda, don't we?
It's incredible. You're riding Africa Twins back
Yes.
on tarmac the whole way, or will you take those off-road a bit?
Right now, we're probably going to say we want to go off-road, but the reality is they'll probably have road tyres, and by then we might actually just be quite happy to stick to the road for a bit.
But did you say you're giving yourself a week to get back from the furthest point away?
Not the furthest, because we're going to go further down south through the Balkans, then come back up to Slovenia where we finish. Slovenia to UK, you can do it in 2 days if you want to do motorways. A week is plenty to do interesting roads because neither of us want to do motorways. I mean, it's not going to be anything serious off-road on those bikes on road tyres, but we might find some lanes.
How long will you have your CRS before you set off?
I'm going to have them in my garage for a couple of months to start doing the preparation work. Either I'll take them to Maja and we'll do some more tech training, but I need to start fettling with them. I love a good fettle. Poking them, checking them, getting used to them. I have a Jamie's CRF at the moment. So Jamie of the Lightweight Adventure is one of the two between Jamie and Mark.
He's the better looking one, isn't he?
Well, Mark's got a lovely beard now. I accidentally, for whatever reason, blew up Millie. So it's very unusual for a CRF engine to go pop, but I made it go pop. Some lack of oil somewhere and the kind of big end went. I've had the opportunity, which I've always wanted to do, is do an engine swap and then take apart the dead engine. And that's taught me a lot. Not that we really want to be going this far on the CRFs. Like if the engine's going to go, I think we just might call Honda. This is unusual. Please help. I've been exploring a lot in my garage about just a single cylinder engine configuration and geometry and finding that fascinating. But what it's meant is I've just taken Millie to pieces and put her back together again. So I feel very more mechanically aware of, how they're put together. They're not complicated machines, but it's still useful. So at the side of the road, I feel like I can, listen and poke and do the right thing if things are loose or shouldn't be loose. But the reality is, we need to be able to change an inner tube. We need to take a front wheel off, a rear wheel off and self-support. I need to check chain tension and do the basics and check oil and check what rattles or what shouldn't. So that's the plan.
Are you going to be posting stuff along the way? And if you are, where can we see it?
We'll be sharing updates on our Instagram accounts as we go along. We've talked about doing daily posts, almost like a diary entry, what happened that day. Then we will obviously film as much as we can and publish everything on YouTube later.
Just to complement what Maja was saying, we have a website, Maja and Lara's Tet Adventure, or if you type in Maja and Lara, you'll find it that way. Maja's Motorcycle Adventures will be the kind of YouTube source to our combined content, and then we'll be using our relative Instagram feeds to provide that day-to-day content. So I'll be on Laramoto and Maja will be on Biker Maja on Instagram.
Biker_Maja.
Yes, and I'm Laramoto, one word with an underscore at the end. There is a balance. It's just a balance of how you include a camera in your life and how you include social media in your life. Because if anything that I've learned from starting to do this is that a camera is an absolute third wheel sometimes and it can detract you from the moment. So what I'm keen to do is figure out what's a healthy respect for where you are and what you're doing and where is screen time appropriate, because you can ruin a perfectly good moment with, oh, I've got to get it on the gram. So there's a balance there.
Now then, there we go. Happy Christmas, everybody. That's probably it for the year. Those of you that are coming to the bike shed, I really look forward to seeing you. Those of you that haven't got tickets to the bike shed, you should get some tickets to the bike shed and come along and we can have some beer and be entertained together with some top class Dakar entertainment before the race gets underway in January. All right. See you later. Have a good one. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.